Hello, people. Welcome back to another video by your good friend, Chad Marco, the Big Anarchy. Make sure you guys smash that like button and check out my other social media and let's have a conversation. So you guys know I put out a video a while ago talking about age gap relationships. And I covered a lot of good points there, but I've noticed that recently, this whole debate has kind of come up again, especially online. I've seen different articles and things like that. Recently it's come out that Bill Belichick, the coach or the former coach for the Patriots, he's in his 70s dating a woman in her 20s. You have Tobey Maguire, who's pushing 50. And from what I understand, he's dating a woman who's in her early 20s or something like that. So this conversation has kind of been on the uptick recently. But one of the things that I really want to talk about that I don't think I really went in depth on in the previous video was the whole concept of the power imbalance of an age gap relationship, which is oftentimes the main reasoning that people will present as to why an age gap relationship is wrong, unfair, and problematic, right? But also before that, I want to just talk about why men tend to prefer younger women in the first place, right? Because I've seen like some ridiculous hopes by women who would say things like, oh, you guys, you just have to settle for younger women because you're not mature enough or you don't make enough money or this or that. And it's so crazy to imply or to think that men are like secretly desiring older women but have to settle for somebody younger, right? Like anytime a man chooses to be with a younger woman, is 9 times out of 10 going to be strictly based on his preference for a woman to be youthful and in the prime of her, beauty and fertility, right? And really, that's the main point as far as like why men have that preference, because quite frankly, when a woman is around like, and again, when a woman's prime is up for debate, but typically, I think most men would agree somewhere around like their 20s, right? Early 20s, mid 20s. That's when women tend to hit their peak as far as like their beauty as well as their fertility, right? And it's really just kind of a common sense thing when you think about it, right? It's no different than if you were shopping for a car, right? Wouldn't you rather have a car that's in peak condition as opposed to one that has, 100,000 miles on it? The paint is scuffed. You got to fix it up. There's holes in the seats and shit, right? Or if you're buying a PS5 or a gaming console, wouldn't you prefer to have one brand new out the box as opposed to one that's been used and there are different issues? The controller buttons are kind of sticky. The rubber on the analog stick is coming off, right? It's really just a common sense thing. Like men's preference for younger women is really no different than a woman's preference for like masculine tall men, right? It's the same way women just like a guy to be tall. Men like women to be younger. They like women to be attractive and near the peak of what their beauty is going to be, And I see also where people try to imply like guys only specifically target those women so that, they can manipulate and take advantage of them. Oh, we know that we can't take advantage of and manipulate an older woman, so we're going to specifically go after somebody that's younger. And again, I'm not saying that never happens, right? But as a man who talks about these things amongst men, what I've noticed is that the primary reasoning is always the same. Women are simply more attractive when they are in the prime of their youth, when they are at the peak of their beauty, when they are in the best condition that they are ever going to be in physically. It's really that simple. Like we're not sitting here in the male clubhouse like, yeah, we're gonna manipulate those dumbass bitches. I mean, this whole manipulation conspiracy regarding older men dating younger women is like some of the silliest shit I've ever heard. Like, we're not sitting here even talking about or thinking about that shit. It's literally, she's hot, she's young, she's as beautiful as she's ever going to be. That's why we have that preference. Older women tend to have more wrinkles. You know, they tend to have, collected more traumas, they more baggage, tend to be more problematic, combative, shit like that. But primarily, it's an aesthetic thing. A woman in her prime is just going to be more attractive, period. The same way a guy who is taller, the same way a guy with a full head of hair, the same way a guy with a lower body fat percentage, muscles, big dick, the same way he's more attractive to women. Women who are in the peak of their attractiveness are going to be more attractive to men, regardless of how old they are, period. And also, there's also the issue of fertility, right? Because sometimes our preferences aren't always strictly conscious. You know, a lot of what we feel about the opposite sex is based on the subconscious. Kind of like how when women can have a preference for like bad boys and shit, but they can't even really, you know, like verbalize what that difference is between him and like a more nicer guy, because a lot of that is subconscious. Like just on a biological level, his aggressiveness translates to her brain, you know, masculinity, dominance, and things like that. And I think also when it comes to like the fertility of women, whether a man understands this consciously or not, when a woman is in the peak of her fertility years, which again is around their 20s, you know, she's simply going to be more attractive to us, because whether we're consciously thinking it or not, our body understands based on the sight of her that she is fertile, that she is going to offer us the healthiest offspring possible if we were to mate with her, compared to someone who is visibly older and entering an age range where they're going to be less fertile. And I've seen people mention that, you know, as men age, we tend to lose, or our fertility declines as well, which is true. But from what I understand, male fertility and female fertility decline at a completely different rate, right? Like, female fertility decline tends to be more rapid and extreme compared to men. But even putting that aside, it still makes sense that a man is going to still prefer that the person he mates with is in a state of high fertility. Again, it makes sense aesthetically, it makes sense biologically. And so then we get to the issue of, you know, the power imbalance, right? The power imbalance of an age gap relationship. You know, what a lot of people will often say is that the problem or the issue with age gap relationships is that the man is older, he has too much power, right? He's going to use his infinite wisdom and experience to manipulate and take advantage of the younger woman. And I'm not going to sit here and say that never happens, right? But I just find it funny that people only care about power imbalances when it's regarding this whole age gap thing. Because the thing about a power imbalance is that, one, it doesn't only manifest in the form of an age gap. A power imbalance can result from the man having more money than the woman, or the woman having more money than the man. A power imbalance can result from a significant gap in intelligence, right? What happens when they're the same age, but the man is significantly more intelligent? Or the woman is significantly more intelligent, right? But also, one of the more interesting but really common and natural power imbalances that people don't really talk about is the literal power imbalance, right? That a man, just being a man, is going to be strong, is going to be much more physically intimidating and strong and powerful than a woman. That's a power imbalance. But we don't look at it like, oh, women shouldn't date men or shouldn't date men stronger than them, right? Even though there are countless men who use their power, their strength, right? Their masculine strength to intimidate women, to abuse women, and to take advantage of women. And the reason why I use that example is because, like I said, a power imbalance is not an inherently bad thing. The problem that we have when people are looking at age gap relationships is that they identify the possibility that because the man is older, he is significantly more experienced and capable of using that to take advantage of the woman, which is true, but that possibility does not mean that it is the fact any more than you can say because you're a man and you're stronger than you're a woman, you're going to use that to control, intimidate, and abuse her. Power can be used for good and power can be used for evil. The same way a man can use his physical strength to abuse a woman and to intimidate and instill fear into a woman, he can use that physical strength to protect that woman and to give that woman a greater sense of security. And it's the same thing with the age gap relationship and the so-called experience and maturity that a man would have in that situation. Yes, you could use that to manipulate and take advantage of younger women, but you could also use that maturity to foster a healthier relationship. You could use that maturity and that experience to help her along her path of growth and evolving into a better person. Maybe she wants to start a business and you have some experience and knowledge on that. And so you can help her accelerate the process towards making it happen. Maybe she has different traumas or issues that she's struggling with. You can help walk her through that. Maybe she's used to dealing with immature men who don't know how to deal with her mood swings or natural, feminine issues that you would better know how to navigate. Again, this whole demonization of the older man in the age gap relationship is 9 times out of 10 based on an assumption of evil. It's an assumption that he is going to use that experience and that maturity for the wrong things, not that he's going to use it for good. But that's no different than saying, oh, this guy's 250 pounds, bench press 300 pounds, he's going to beat the shit out of his girl. That's no more closer to the truth than saying that shit. Power can be used for good and it can be used for evil. So again, when people say this whole power imbalance, that look, I'm not saying that that's not a possibility, but you can't assume that somebody is going to use power for evil just because. It's only a possibility. It's not a fact. It's not a guarantee every single time. But then you got to also look at the other half of that situation, right? And this is really what bothers me the most. I'm gonna be honest, because when we have this discussion and this conversation regarding age gap relationships, people really act like these girls, just because they're 20, 21, 23, like they are just so inexperienced. They don't know what's going on. They walking around in la la land, right? And the craziest thing is that couldn't be further from the truth. The simple fact is these girls out here, a lot of them, in the words of Tupac, they get around, to say the least. Your average 21, 22, 23-year-old has been fucking and sucking and licking niggas since she was 13, 14 years old. And that's just the truth. I know girls who are teenagers that have already had their first abortions. I know women by their early 20s had like 4 or 5 abortions. Have been with 5 men, 10 men, passed around, gang bangs, ran trains on them, done fuck drug dealers, gangsters, thugs, all this shit. But you telling me that this same woman dating an older guy, that's the line, that's the issue. Oh, that's where the problem starts. Right? That's what really gets me. I could see if we were talking about Amish virgins, right, straight off the farm. Right, okay, now I can listen to what you have to say. But when we sit here and people seriously try to act as if the average modern woman in her early 20s is somehow so inexperienced as far as like relationships and dating and the different types of men that she's been with, that being with a guy who's maybe 10 or so years older than her, like that's the issue. That's the problem. The problem isn't that she's been with 10 dudes by the time she's fucking 21, 25. The problem isn't that she done been fucking deep-throated till she vomited. That she been licking ass and that she been tricking, got her OnlyFans. Y'all telling me that's not the problem. It's the guy who's 30 dating her. Not the fact that she got HPV, herpes, done had chlamydia, this or that. No, it's the guy being 30. That's the issue. This is and this is normal shit for women. All this shit this is normal. There ain't too many women in their early 20s who are just these innocent little angel virgins who don't know their way around a fucking cock. These girls have been gargling balls since 14 years old.
Let me break it to you boys. The average 23-year-old girl has slept with more men than the average 53-year-old woman. Let that sink in. We're living in a time, and I know this because I used to be a teacher for many years, and I couldn't believe the sexual promiscuity amongst 14, 13, 12-year-old girls, because here's what they had. They had access to Snapchat. They could send nudes of themselves to older boys or whatever it is from the age of 11, 12. Nudes or whatever it is, well, it's technically child pornography. They would start so young, and they're living in an era where there's no negativity attached to sleeping around. It's seen as liberating. So by the time a girl is 23 years old, I promise you she's slept with more men than a 53-year-old woman, because a 53-year-old woman grew up in a time where she was shamed for sleeping around. There was no sexual liberation. There was a sanctity attached to sexuality. A 22-year-old grew up in a time where Snapchat, twerking, wearing promiscuous clothes, going out, being on social media was all normalized.
By the time they 21, 22, they veterans. These bitches veterans. That's what gets me the most about this conversation, bro. It's that the problem starts with the woman dating a guy who's older, not with everything else she's done up until that point. And see, what people will also say is that, you know, they'll talk about brain development, right? Oh, the brain doesn't finish developing until whatever age, right? Now, really, from what I understand, the brain finishes developing around 25, right? And so if that's your argument, that's still kind of weak, because you would still be upset at a 35, 40, 45-year-old man dating a 25-year-old woman. But let's knock it down a little bit. She's 21, right? If the issue is a lack of brain development, right, and which I understand as well, then shouldn't they not be having sex at all? Why is it preferable for an inexperienced woman to be with a dumbass, inexperienced man that can't show her shit, that can't guide her, that isn't mature, that doesn't know who he is, that, right? It still doesn't make, now if you're gonna say nobody should be having sex until their brain is finished developing. Okay, look, I don't agree, but at least you're being morally consistent. One thing that I really hate is when people are morally inconsistent. At least you would be consistent. It makes no sense to be like, well, their brain isn't finished developing, but they should still be sucking and fucking and licking from 14 and up. It's just because the guy that they're sucking and fucking and licking is also, right? So it's still, again, if you're going to say no sucking and fucking and licking till you're 25, okay, that's consistent. But don't be here acting like, you know, well, the only issue is that you're trying to date the older guy. No. If you're too stupid to fuck a 30-year-old man or a 40-year-old man, you're too stupid to fuck. Period. You're just point blank. So let's ball that up and let's throw that in the trash can. But the reason why the age gap relationship bothers women so much is because it's probably one of the few relationship dynamics where you can say that men do have some leverage and some power. Again, how that power is used, that's what matters. The power itself does not mean that something wrong is going on. but it is one of the few relationship examples that serves as an example of male power. And the reason why is this, because in a relationship where an older man is dating a younger woman, and again, let's assume that he's not some evil pedophile creep, right? He likes this girl, he has good intentions, or even he just want to fuck, she just want to fuck, right? She wants some daddy dick, whatever the case may be. Because of his experience, or at least, now this isn't always the case, right? Let's be real. It's some simp ass blue pill 34. Just being older don't mean you're this master manipulator or Casanova. Let's get that clear. But again, let's say this guy is like red pill, so he kind of know female nature and shit. That man is going to have the experience and the knowledge and the wisdom and the knowledge of self to where that woman is not going to be able to manipulate and take advantage of him as well if he was her or someone her own age, right? That's where, again, this is the real power imbalance, or so-called, like, this is what it is. And so what you have is a man that is able to protect himself better from the manipulation of the women he chooses to be with. But not only that, he is in a position to disqualify women his own age or women older than himself. And so you got to think about it. A lot of times when you see these relationships where it's an older guy dating a younger woman, it's not just some loser weirdo creep, right? Because a younger woman is still going to have, she still has hypergamy. She still knows her value. She ain't just going to waste time dealing with a bummy ass 30-year-old, right? A lot of times what you have is older men being selected because they are just a better option than the men her own age. They're better established. They got more money. They're more mature. And if they've taken good care of their bodies, if they have good genetics, right? You can be in your 30s and look like you in your 20s, be in your 40s and look like you in your 30s and still be strong and youthful. Basically, an older man can be a total package in a way that a lot of younger guys are just not going to be. And so, of course, women his own age, that's the guy that they're going to want. The women in their 70s, they want Bill Belichick. The women in their 60s, they want him, but they can't get him because he can have 20-year-old cheerleader girl. The women in their 30s and 40s, they want Tobey Maguire, but they can't get him because he's dating 20-year-old whoever the fuck. The women in their 40s and 50s, they want Leonardo DiCaprio, but they can't have him because he's dating. And so when you look at those types of examples, again, I think it's upsetting to women, especially now that we live in such a society where we have so much feminism. It's more and more becoming a gynocentric society. Of course, it bothers women because these types of relationship examples, it's like a double whammy against them, right? It's men disqualifying older women who can't compete with younger women, but also being in a relationship dynamic where they can't be as easily taken advantage of or manipulated by women. And you know, just think about, like, as the perfect example, a lot of these like older red pill guys, right? Look at guys like Alpha Male Strategies, or look at a guy like Coach Greg Adams, you know, and when you look into their stories, when they were teenagers, when they were in their 20s, a lot, and really just all across the board, a lot of these red pill guys, they got the way they are because they had those mishaps with women when they were young. They were manipulated and taken advantage of by women. They didn't know who they were. And so they had a lot of problems dealing with women. And as they got older, right, and they became more mature and more established, women couldn't really run those same games on them anymore. And also because they had taken such good care of themselves and they established themselves financially and stuff, they were still able to date younger women. So again, you take a guy like Alpha Male Strategies, if he was dating a 25-year-old woman, you know, she just wouldn't be in position to really fuck him up the way she could a guy that was her own age. And so, but again, this is the power dynamic or the power imbalance, but it's not a bad thing as long as the guy is not using it to manipulate her. But using that power for defense, right? Using that power to prevent your own manipulation, that's a totally different story. But with all that being said, now we are going to transition to part 2 of this video or videos. And I got this article that was kind of getting passed around R9K and whatnot. A pretty hilarious article written by a woman regarding older men who date younger women. And we're going to try to just go through it and, you know, tackle some of the points that she was trying to make. So stay tuned.